Do you remember when Jungkook said those words that stuck with everyone, "The artists are not to blame"? Today they resonate more powerfully than ever. After everything that happened with Taehyung a few weeks ago, it seems history is repeating itself, only this time Jungkook is the target. Again, the same rumors, the same old and absurd stories that were debunked years ago. Now they're circulating again as if they were new, and along with them come fabricated rumors, created to drag him down, to tarnish his name without evidence, without any sense. It all started with a photo that was suddenly posted, an image of Jungkook alone, without context and without a clear source. The accompanying text was in Chinese, and the person who uploaded it didn't even explain where they got it. They only said it was old and that they didn't know it was Jungkook when they took it, that they found it by chance. But that story makes absolutely no sense. It all reeks of a repeated strategy, the same one used against Taehyung recently, as if they want to apply the same pattern over and over again. The same groups, the same accounts spreading false rumors, and the curious thing is that they almost always come from the same place. The same script is repeated, only the names change. These lucky people who always claim to have run into Jungkook or Taehyung right when something important is happening. It all seems too convenient, too calculated. And if you observe carefully, you realize that it always happens when something big is about to happen or when there's something the company wants to hide. It's impossible not to notice that there are hands pulling the strings behind the scenes. That company, which has already shown how far it will go to divert attention, is doing it again. They tried it with Taehyung, and now they're doing it with Jungkook. They're trying to diminish their strength, to dim the light they both have when they're together. Despite everything, Taehyung and Jungkook have never given a single reason for people to doubt them. They have always been consistent, sincere, and transparent in what they show. The way they look at each other, care for each other, and are attentive to one another speaks louder than any rumor. It's not about words or appearances, but about actions. And those actions are seen in small gestures, in how they silently support each other, in how they always find each other even when it seems that everything around them is trying to tear them apart. This smear campaign isn't new, it's just changing its form. But those who truly follow them, those who know their story and their personalities, know how to distinguish between what's real and what's fabricated. What they want is to divide, confuse, and distract the fans, as if they could erase with lies what they've spent years building. However, each attack only demonstrates how important they are and the discomfort they generate in those who can't stand to see them grow together. That's why it's important not to fall into the trap. Not to be swayed by what appears without foundation, by those posts that seem to appear out of nowhere just when they're at their most successful. We need to look beyond the surface, remember what happened with Taehyung, how they tried to tarnish his name, and in the end, everything was exposed. Now they're repeating the same tactic, only this time with Jungkook, trying to provoke the same effect. But it's no longer so easy to deceive those who have witnessed the whole process, those who can recognize the truth behind the noise. Taekook's actions have always shown, without needing words, to whom their hearts belong. For over 10 years, Jungkook and Taehyung have shared a bond that goes beyond the visible, a love that grew through glances, gestures, and silences that spoke louder than any words. Every moment between them leaves a feeling of genuine connection, the kind that isn't forced or planned, it simply exists. When their eyes meet, it seems as if the world stops for a moment. There's something in the way they look at each other, as if they recognize each other amidst everything, as if nothing more is needed to understand what they feel. Taehyung and Jungkook's hands always seem to reach for each other, even when they try to hide it. They are small movements, almost imperceptible, but they are there. Sometimes a quick caress, a light touch, or a smile that escapes when the other isn't looking. They are gestures that speak of habit, of affection, of trust. It's the way they communicate without saying it directly, the way they share something that is just theirs. In every glance, you can see genuine affection, a story that needs no explanation. They've been through so much together, some easy and others not so much, but they always find their way back to each other. Their relationship has the naturalness that only comes when two people understand each other without having to say a word. It's a connection that has grown stronger with time, more peaceful, more conscious. Recently, Jungkook expressed something that touched everyone who heard him, especially Taehyung, who was there, looking at him with that attention he only gives to him. Jungkook said, "I was so happy after meeting you, that I was able to love you so much because you embraced and understood my young and immature mind with such warmth." It was a simple phrase, but full of sincerity. There was no need for embellishment or drama. In those words, you could feel the gratitude and love he's carried inside for years. It was a sincere confession, spoken from the heart, and those who heard it could feel it. That declaration was a way of remembering everything they've been through. It hasn't all been easy for them. They've had to endure rumors, judgments, and comments that try to minimize what they share. However, the passage of time has only confirmed what many already saw, that their relationship doesn't depend on what others say, but on what they feel. Although some try to distort their story or cast doubt on them, their bond remains evident in every gesture, every word, and every appearance together. Jungkook and Taehyung have learned to live their relationship calmly, to trust in what they've built. They don't need to prove anything, because the way they look at each other and care for one another says it all. Adversity didn't drive them apart, on the contrary, it made them more aware of the value of having each other. That way of supporting each other, of being there for each other unconditionally, is what keeps them strong. That's why those who follow them and have seen them grow know that Taekook's love is real, deep, and sincere. It's not about idealizing or creating stories, but about recognizing what has always been there, an honest connection that has withstood the test of time and the scrutiny of others. Those who believe in them do so because they've witnessed that unfaithful connection, that way they understand each other with just a glance. Taekook will remain that bond that needs no explanation, because their story is made of authentic moments. And as long as they continue to look at each other with that calm and affection that characterizes them, nothing can break what they've built. Those who support them know this and continue to trust, not in rumors or appearances, but in what Jungkook and Taehyung have shown throughout all these years, a constant, unwavering, and true affection. And it's true, though it may seem like a small thing, the way Jungkook and Taehyung interact has something undeniable. No one forces them to do anything, and yet everything they share feels genuine. The glances they exchange, those touches that last only an instant, the way they seek each other out without speaking, as if they could understand each other without a single word. There's something about how they move together that makes everything else around them disappear, and that can't be faked. Jungkook doesn't act like this with just anyone, and neither does Taehyung. There's no way to deny the way they find each other and care for each other without anyone else noticing. Recently, Jungkook said something that moved everyone, especially Taehyung, who was there, looking at him with that unique attention only he receives. Jungkook said, "I was so happy after meeting you, that I was able to love you so much because you embraced and understood my young and immature mind with such warmth." They weren't long or dramatic words, just simple and sincere, but they conveyed everything he'd carried inside for years, that silent love built step by step. Taehyung listened, and without needing to respond with words, you could see the way his gaze followed him, soft, attentive, filled with something that couldn't be explained with clichés. Sometimes it seems they don't even realize how much they betray each other with small gestures. Jungkook doesn't look at anyone else like that, nor does he approach with the same calmness, nor does he seek closeness with anyone else the way he does with Taehyung. And neither does Taehyung. It's something that simply happens, as if they both know that this small space they share belongs to them, even amidst everything else happening around them. Anyone who observes them carefully notices it immediately, there's a language that doesn't need words, gestures that say more than any declaration ever could. Every moment between them has a special tenderness. When they accidentally brush against each other or their hands cross without them noticing, you can feel the naturalness of their connection. There's no exaggeration or acting, everything happens in a way that feels authentic, everyday, and unique all at once. There are moments when they simply look at each other, and that's enough. The way Jungkook tilts his head, how Taehyung smiles a little more broadly than usual, how their eyes meet and hold each other, all of this creates a kind of silent conversation that needs no explanation. Even amidst other people or noise, they manage to maintain this connection that seems invisible to everyone else. There's something about how they understand each other that makes time around them stop, even if just for a second. There's no drama or grand, forced gestures, just the natural way two people who understand each other deeply behave. Every glance, every light smile, every small gesture carries weight because it comes from a place of genuine care and closeness. Anyone who has observed them closely understands this quickly. Taekook has its own rhythm, its own way of communicating that doesn't need words. Everything they share seems simple, yet impossible to ignore. Jungkook and Taehyung know, without saying a word, that they're there for each other, that there's an understanding that nothing and no one can break. And that, however subtle, is what makes every moment they spend together feel special. It's not forced at all, it's just them, as they are, and that's what makes every gesture count.